Most people think they're free until the moment they try to say no, walk away, or break a rule. That's when they realize they were never free. They were domesticated. Modern society has replaced chains with comfort, control with convenience. You're praised for being agreeable, rewarded for being tame, and punished the moment you start thinking independently. You're taught to obey quietly, to compromise endlessly, and to label resistance as selfishness. But Machiavelli never glorified comfort. He dissected it. He knew that real freedom doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from being untouchable. Not because the world lets you go, but because you no longer ask for permission. In this video, you'll learn 12 ruthless truths from Machiavelli that will break the illusion of freedom and teach you how to claim power on your terms. Not through rebellion, but through strategy, silence, and sovereignty. Before we dive in, I say thank you all my supporters. Take a moment to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this with others who need to see it. Rescue someone today. Before you proceed, this video calls for a total reflection, introspection, and the submission that you want to be the best version of yourself. If you intend to remain mediocre, this is not for you. Let's dive in. Lesson 1. Freedom requires fearlessness. Freedom isn't granted, it's taken, and only by those who no longer fear the consequences. The average man is not free, not because of chains, not because of laws, but because of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of walking alone. He asks before moving. He apologizes for taking space. He waits for signs, signals, and validation. And in that hesitation, his freedom dies quietly. Machiavelli knew this long before modern psychology caught up. He understood that fear is the leash used to domesticate dangerous men. Not chains, not cages. Fear. The man who cannot walk away from comfort, from approval, from security, is already owned. And every day he obeys, not because he must, but because he fears what will happen if he doesn't. You fear cutting someone off, so you tolerate disrespect. You fear being misunderstood, so you over-explain your truth. You fear being alone, so you settle for less. And then you call that compromise. But Machiavelli would call it surrender. True freedom begins the moment fear loses its grip. Not when you stop feeling it, but when you stop being ruled by it. When you say, yes, I feel fear, and I move anyway. That's power. That's control. That's the first step into sovereignty. Because the man who fears nothing can be used by no one. He is dangerous, not because he fights, but because there's nothing you can take from him to make him kneel. He doesn't chase, because he doesn't fear loss. He doesn't explain, because he doesn't fear being judged. He doesn't hesitate, because he doesn't fear failure. This is your initiation. Identify the fear, drag it into the light, and starve it. Because until you do, every decision you make will be filtered through a fear that doesn't serve you. Machiavelli didn't worship courage. He studied it, and he understood this simple rule of power. If you want to be free, you must stop being afraid of what it costs. If you want to be free, let us know in the comment section. What are those things you've been doing wrong? Lesson 2. Comfort is the real prison. They don't need to chain you to keep you in place. Just offer you a couch, a screen, and a little peace. Modern society doesn't enslave you by force. It enslaves you with comfort. It whispers, why fight? You have enough. And that whisper becomes a lullaby. Slowly, your edge dulls. Your hunger weakens. You trade your ambition for distraction, your fire for a full stomach. And before you realize it, you've been tamed. Machiavelli never feared pain. He feared passivity. Because pain sharpens. But comfort softens. It makes a man agreeable, pliable, safe. And once he becomes safe, he's no longer a threat to anyone, not even to the mediocrity choking him. You think you're choosing peace, but what you're really choosing is sedation. You've been taught that the absence of struggle is happiness. But Machiavelli knew better. He understood that power only grows through friction. Look around. Men stuck in dead-end jobs, afraid to risk. Men in loveless relationships afraid to leave. Men with dreams buried under Netflix, cheap food, and the illusion of relaxing. All comfort, all poison, all prison. Because the soft man obeys. He doesn't rebel. He doesn't risk. He doesn't rise. He complies with a smile, and then wonders why no one respects him. Machiavelli would say this: the man who cannot tolerate discomfort will always kneel to the man who can. If you want to be free, you must make discomfort your weapon. Chase tension, lean into rejection, get addicted to the stretch, not the sedation. Because comfort teaches you to avoid pain at all costs. But the cost is your life, your potential, your spine, your ability to walk into the unknown and come out harder. You're not tired, you're bored, you're not weak, you're padded, you're not at peace, you're just numb. And you mistake that numbness for freedom. It's not. It's your leash. Lesson 3. Stop explaining yourself. You think you're clarifying. You think you're being respectful. You think you're building understanding. But every time you explain yourself to someone who hasn't earned the right to your truth, you're negotiating your value. And Machiavelli would tell you this: power doesn't explain, it declares. Modern culture has conditioned you to believe that being misunderstood is a failure. So you over-explain, you defend, you justify. You offer context to people who've already decided what they want to believe. That's not communication. That's submission in disguise. Because explanation is a power exchange. And every time you feel the need to explain yourself, you are subconsciously admitting, I don't trust my stance unless it's approved. I don't move unless I'm understood. I don't act unless I'm seen clearly. That's weakness wrapped in politeness. Machiavellian strategy rejects this. He would say, speak less, move more. Let the result explain the intention. Let your silence shake them harder than any argument ever could. Because when you stop explaining, two things happen. 1, the manipulators lose grip. They can't pull strings they can't see. 2, the worthy lean in. Only those who respect your presence will seek understanding, not demand it. Explanation should be rare, deliberate, and strategic, not emotional, constant, and reactionary. You don't owe anyone your reasoning. You don't need to walk someone through your boundaries. You don't need to defend your evolution to those still clinging to your past self. Silence is not rudeness, it's dominance. It's clarity. It's the energy of someone who knows their direction and doesn't slow down to make others comfortable with it. So here's the shift. If they misunderstand you, let them. If they question your motives, let them wonder. If they beg for clarification, give them none, because power is not in being understood. Power is in moving anyway. Lesson 4. Burn the need to be understood. The need to be understood is a hidden cage. It's built from a craving, one you've been taught since birth. Be relatable. Make them see your side. Help them understand where you're coming from. But here's the Machiavellian truth. The world does not owe you understanding, and chasing it is a tactical mistake. Every second you spend trying to be understood is a second where you surrender your frame. It's a leak in your psychological fortress, a crack in your armor, and manipulators live in that crack. They'll exploit it. Mirror your words. Act like they get you, until they've mapped your desires and know exactly which strings to pull. Machiavelli understood this better than most. Clarity invites control. If they fully understand your motives, they can twist them. If they know your fears, they can trigger them. If they understand your soul, they can fracture it with precision. So what do? You burn the need, not the people, not the bridges, the need. You learn to live with being misunderstood. You let them create their own narratives, and you don't correct them. You let your image become a myth, because a myth is more powerful than a fact. Here's the shift. Stop begging for alignment. Stop pleading to be seen. Stop bleeding clarity into people who only want access, not understanding. Because those who truly respect you don't need full understanding to give full loyalty. And those who demand understanding before giving respect were never allies to begin with. Power doesn't clarify. Power moves. Let them call it arrogance. Let them label it coldness. Let them misread your silence. Their misinterpretation is not your problem, it's your protection. You're not here to be understood, you're here to be untouchable. Lesson 5. Use people without attachment. Most people confuse two things that should never be the same: use and bond. They think using someone makes them disloyal. They think moving on without guilt makes them cold. They think detachment is cruelty. But Machiavelli would scoff at that sentiment. He knew the hard truth of power. People are not sacred, they are strategic. Some are stepping stones, some are mirrors, some are fuel, and some are fire. And if you confuse that with permanent loyalty, you will get burned. Machiavellian wisdom separates emotion from function. He didn't bond out of sentiment, he bonded for leverage. And when that leverage expired, he moved. Because here's the law: loyalty given to the wrong person becomes a leash around your neck. You must learn to see people for what they bring, not what they promise. Study them, use their strengths, extract the value. And when the mission changes, release them without guilt. This isn't inhuman, it's precise. Because the emotional weight of unnecessary attachment slows strategy, clouds decisions, and dilutes power. And here's the kicker: you're being used too. Every time you show up, solve problems, give value, someone's extracting from you. The difference? A Machiavellian sees the exchange clearly. He knows the game. He plays it without apology. So shift your frame. Don't expect permanence from utility. Don't mourn what was meant to be temporary. Don't offer emotional loyalty to transactional people. Use people wisely, ethically, without illusion. And when their part in your story is done, move. No guilt, no explanations, no long goodbyes. You are not cold, you are clear. Use people, but never let them own you. Lesson 6. Detach emotion from action. Emotion is natural, but in the world of power, emotion is also a liability. It clouds precision, it blurs timing. It replaces strategy with impulse. Machiavelli never said, "Don't feel." He said, "Don't act from feeling." This is where most people fail. They act in anger. They respond in fear. They make decisions in desperation, then regret them in silence. The Machiavellian moves differently. He feels but filters. He processes but postpones action. He knows that a triggered man is a predictable man, and predictability kills power. Here's the upgrade. You must become emotionally bilingual. You must learn to feel deeply and still act coldly. Feel the betrayal, but don't explode. Feel the pain, but don't retreat. Feel the joy, but don't become sloppy. The strongest man isn't the one who avoids emotion. It's the one who can hold it without letting it leak. This is the essence of strategic calm. Not numbness, not detachment from reality, but detachment from reaction. Let others cry publicly, rage openly, spiral when things go wrong. You observe, you adjust. You strike when the terrain favors you. Machiavelli believed that emotions are signals, not commands. A signal tells you something's happening, but it doesn't get to decide your next move. That's your job. So train for this. In stress, breathe deeper. In anger, speak slower. In fear, plan longer. Because when your action is no longer dictated by how you feel, you become something few people ever reach. Untouchable in conflict, unreadable in negotiation, unshakable under fire. Emotion clouds war, but you move like a tactician. Lesson 7. Master the art of saying no. Most people can't say it. They squirm, they hesitate, they wrap it in a dozen apologies. They think no is conflict. But Machiavelli knew no is identity. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you betray yourself. You dilute your focus. You train others to see your time, your energy, your boundaries as negotiable. That's not generosity, that's self-erasure. Power begins at refusal, not just of favors, but of roles, expectations, dynamics that don't serve you. When you say no to distraction, you protect direction. When you say no to flattery, you preserve clarity. When you say no to being used, you reinforce worth. Understand this. The first no defines you. It tells the world how far they can push. It tells manipulators how easy you are to bend. It tells parasites how long they can feed before you notice. So you must practice it. Early, cleanly, without apology. Don't explain, don't defend, don't soften it with maybe later. A Machiavellian no is a full sentence, sharp, clear, final. This doesn't mean you become difficult. It means you become disciplined. It means access to you is no longer casual, it's earned. Because a man who can't say no is always working someone else's plan. He's always rearranging his life to avoid offense. He's always giving more than he gets until he breaks. But the man who says no early, strategically, he owns his time. He defines his energy. He keeps his circle sharp and his mission intact. Machiavelli didn't say yes to peace, he said yes to power. And that started with 1,000 hidden no's. You want freedom? Start refusing. Lesson 8. Remove the need for permission. From the moment you're born, society whispers one command. Ask first, ask to speak, ask to move, ask to dream, ask to lead. And if you don't, you're labeled reckless, arrogant, disobedient. Not because you're wrong, but because you've escaped the leash. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He saw that systems of control don't need chains, they need obedience. And nothing sustains obedience like conditioning people to wait for approval before acting. But power doesn't wait. Power doesn't ask. Power moves. Look closely. The most dangerous people in the world are not the loudest. They're the ones who move without checking if it's allowed. They don't wait for green lights. They build their own roads. They don't ask, is this okay? They ask, does this serve my objective? They don't pause for applause. They act while others deliberate. This isn't recklessness. This is calculated defiance. It's what separates the follower from the force. Because every time you wait for permission, you signal that someone else holds the authority over your choices, over your future, over your mind. Machiavelli would say, to wait for approval is to invite subjugation. So kill the habit. Stop checking if your move makes others comfortable. Stop shrinking your ideas until they're safe. Stop seeking validation from people whose lives you wouldn't trade places with. Instead, move, act, claim space, let the world catch up or complain. Either way, you'll already be ahead. Because freedom doesn't begin with applause. It begins the moment you stop asking, am I allowed? Lesson 9. Train yourself to walk alone. Every man chasing power must one day walk into a room and realize no one is coming with him. Not the friends who once praised him. Not the family who said, be careful. Not the crowd that cheered until he changed. Just silence and forward motion. Machiavelli knew this law of strategy. The path to true dominance begins in solitude, because the herd doesn't build leaders. It consumes them. It flattens sharp edges. It rewards sameness and punishes strength. You want to be respected? Step away from the herd. Because the herd doesn't understand ambition. The herd doesn't tolerate transformation. The herd only respects the man they can predict, control, and define. But the man who walks alone, he becomes something else entirely. He becomes unpredictable, unreachable, unshakable. That's the wolf in the forest. Alone, but feared. Unaccompanied, but respected. Not because he's isolated by weakness, but because he's carved by independence. And here's the brutal truth. If you cannot walk alone, you will be owned. Owned by the need for company. Owned by the fear of judgment. Owned by the illusion that safety lies in numbers. No, safety lies in self-command. When you can walk alone, you're no longer reactive. You're no longer pacified by acceptance. You move from neediness to necessity. And the world, it senses that. People chase those who don't need to be chased. They follow those who already lead themselves. So burn this into your mind. If you need the crowd, you are already defeated. But if you can stand alone, truly, fully, fearlessly, you are already free. Lesson 10. Learn to be disliked. If you want to be powerful, you must give up the addiction to being liked. Most men never rise, not because they lack ambition, but because they're slaves to approval. They shape-shift for acceptance. They shrink themselves to avoid conflict. They smile when they should strike. And worst of all, they confuse being liked with being respected. Machiavelli would call that emotional blindness. He knew the man who needs approval will always be manipulated by those who can withhold it. Listen closely. The world doesn't like men who challenge it. It doesn't like men who move without asking. It doesn't like men who refuse to bend. But the world will respect those same men, because deep down, even your enemies respect your defiance. Even those who hate you know your name, and those who mock you still watch you. Why? Because you broke the one rule they can't. You stop needing their applause. There is Machiavellian power in indifference. Not cold hatred, not bitterness, but clean, surgical detachment from approval. You don't chase being liked. You chase clarity, movement, outcome. The weak want everyone's love. The strong are willing to be misunderstood, misjudged, even hated, as long as they remain free. You want to move like a strategist? Stop softening your truth just to stay in someone's good graces. Stop apologizing for being direct. Stop modifying yourself so others feel safe. Your job is not to be liked. Your job is to be effective. So if they dislike you for your standards, your intensity, your strategy, let them. Because when the time comes, they won't follow the man who bent for their comfort. They'll follow the man who stood alone without flinching. And that man is you. Lesson 11. Destroy weak language. Your words are weapons, or they are surrender. Most people don't even realize it, but their language is leaking submission. Every time you say, maybe we could, I'm sorry, but I was just wondering, I think sort of, you are announcing weakness. These aren't just phrases, they are signals. Signals that tell the room, I doubt myself, I'm open to correction, I need permission. Machiavelli would hear these words and smile coldly because they reveal the perfect target. A man who softens every sentence is already softened inside. He's pliable, controllable, beatable. Power doesn't speak in apologies. Power speaks in declaration. You don't just want to say something, you say it. You don't kind of think, you know. You don't ask for space, you take it. Let's be clear, this isn't about arrogance. This is about precision. It's about removing the static in your speech so your words land like blades, not feathers. Weak language is a habit. One society rewards because it makes you harmless. But harmless men are never respected. They're dismissed, forgotten, walked over. You want power? Strip your speech of apology. Cut the fluff. Drop the disclaimers. Speak like someone who means every syllable. Machiavellian strategy demands that your presence is felt the moment you speak. Not because you're loud, but because you're exact, deliberate, undeniable. From now on, catch yourself. Rebuild your vocabulary from clarity, not comfort. Because a sharpened tongue is the tool of every strategist. And once you master it, you will no longer be read as uncertain. You will be read as dangerous. Lesson 12. Don't be free. Be untouchable. You've been told to chase freedom, but freedom is not the final goal. Because freedom can still be threatened. It can be revoked, manipulated, leveraged. A free man can still be broken, but an untouchable man cannot. Machiavelli would draw the line here. He didn't stop at autonomy. He sought invincibility. Not in the body, in the mind, in the will, in the strategy. A free man walks out of the cage. An untouchable man makes the cage irrelevant. He no longer responds to pressure, shame, guilt, or praise, because all of it, positive and negative, is leverage. And leverage is how men are controlled. To be untouchable means this: you no longer flinch when attacked. You no longer explain when questioned. You no longer react when insulted. You move on your own timing. You speak by choice, not compulsion. You serve no narrative but your own. This is not numbness. It's mastery. You feel, you think, you calculate, but you never fold. They try to cancel you. You don't explain. They withdraw affection. You remain still. They offer rewards. You don't chase. That's untouchable. You cannot be bribed by comfort. You cannot be caged by approval. You cannot be baited by insult. You cannot be moved by fear. This is the final Machiavellian truth. Be so disciplined, so detached, so strategic. They can't threaten you with anything. And when you reach this level, you don't become more visible. You become more dangerous because they can't figure you out. They can't control your decisions. They can't map your moves. This is not for everyone. It's for the few who refuse to live their life as a reaction. For the few who would rather be misunderstood than manipulated. For the few who burn their leash and never look back. Freedom is a beautiful illusion, but untouchable is the reality that power lives in. You think you're free because the chains are gone. But real power isn't about chains, it's about reaction. As long as you're reacting to people, insults, praise, rejection, you're still in a cage, an invisible one. The truth is brutal. You're not free when you break chains. You're free when you stop reacting to them. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The true ruler isn't the man who overthrows the king. It's the man who makes the crown irrelevant. Because power isn't about conquest, it's about control. And the highest form of control is self-control. When you no longer need their approval, when their disrespect doesn't shake your direction, when their silence doesn't trigger your insecurity, that's when you've become powerful. Not loud, not public, but immovable. Understand this. The world does not respect kindness. It exploits it. The world does not respect loyalty. It manipulates it. The world does not respect the honest man until he becomes dangerous. That's who you must become. Not bitter, not cruel, but unshakable. Because the man who can't be moved can't be controlled. And the man who can't be controlled, he rules. Be feared, be respected, be free. This wasn't just a video. These weren't just lessons. They were weapons, crafted for the mind that refuses to kneel. If you felt something shift, if something inside you woke up, not with emotion, but with strategy, then this is just the beginning. Subscribe now, because we don't teach comfort, we teach clarity, we teach control, we teach war. In a world built on obedience, the free man is not admired, he's remembered. And if you want to be remembered, you learn to think like this, you move like this, you become this. Until next time, stay sharp, stay ruthless, and never ever ask for freedom. Take it.